Sarah Mitchell had lived on the outskirts of Cedar Rapids, Iowa for 37 years, but she had never seen anything quite like what happened that foggy October morning. The rope that would change everything hung innocuously from the old oak tree at the edge of her property, swaying gently in the autumn breeze. She had noticed it 3 days earlier while feeding her chickens, assuming it was some childhood remnant left by the previous owners. Little did she know that this simple length of hemp would soon reveal a secret that had been buried for over 2 decades. The morning started like any other. Sarah's husband, Tom, had left early for his shift at the John Deere plant, and their teenage daughter Emma was still asleep upstairs. Sarah pulled on her worn boots and headed outside to tend to the animals. The mist clung to the cornfields that stretched endlessly beyond their 10-acre farm, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. As she scattered feed for the chickens, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A faint whimpering sound coming from the direction of the old oak. Moving closer, Sarah's heart nearly stopped. There, suspended from the rope she had dismissed as harmless, was a young woman. But this wasn't what it appeared to be. The woman was very much alive, her feet barely touching the ground, her wrists bound tightly behind her back. Tears streamed down her dirt-stained face as she looked at Sarah with desperate, pleading eyes. "Please," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't untie the rope. Please, I'm begging you. Don't untie it." Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing. Every instinct told her to help, to free this woman immediately, but something in the stranger's voice gave her pause. The woman appeared to be in her early 20s, with long auburn hair matted with leaves and mud. Her clothes were torn and filthy, suggesting she had been outside for some time. "What's your name, honey?" Sarah asked gently, stepping closer but not yet reaching for the rope. Jenny Morrison," the woman replied, her breathing labored. "I know this looks terrible, but please trust me. If you untie this rope, something horrible will happen. I can't explain it all right now, but my life depends on staying exactly where I am." Sarah's practical farming instincts warred with her compassion. She had raised 2 children and dealt with countless emergencies over the years, but nothing had prepared her for this bizarre situation. The woman seemed lucid and coherent, yet her request defied all logic. "Jenny, I need to call the police," Sarah said, pulling out her cell phone. "This isn't right. Someone has done this to you." "No!" Jenny's voice cracked with panic. "Please, Mrs. Mitchell. Yes, I know who you are. I've been watching your farm for weeks. I know this sounds insane, but I put myself here. I tied myself to this tree because it's the only way to stay safe. There's someone after me, someone who's been hunting me for months. As long as I'm here, visible and helpless, he won't make his move. The moment you free me, he'll know, and he'll come for both of us." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. How did this stranger know her name? And what kind of pursuer would be deterred by such a strange strategy? "Who's after you, Jenny?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite her growing unease. Jenny's eyes darted toward the cornfields, scanning the misty landscape. "His name is Marcus Webb. He used to be a detective with the Cedar Rapids Police Department until he was forced to retire 5 years ago. But he never stopped investigating the case that destroyed his career, my sister's murder." The weight of Jenny's words settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about one troubled young woman. This was about justice, revenge, and the dangerous intersection between the two. "Your sister was murdered?" Sarah asked softly. "Rachel Morrison. She was killed 23 years ago when she was just 19. Marcus was the lead detective on the case, and he became obsessed with solving it. Too obsessed. He started taking shortcuts, planting evidence, intimidating witnesses. When the department found out, they fired him, but the damage was done. The real killer walked free because of Marcus's misconduct, and the case went cold." Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process this information. She vaguely remembered hearing about a young woman's murder decades ago, but the details were fuzzy. "So why is he after you now?" Sarah asked. Jenny's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Because 3 months ago, I found evidence that proves who really killed Rachel. Not just proof, I found the murder weapon. Marcus has spent the last 23 years believing that a man named David Chun was the killer. But David was innocent. The real murderer is someone Marcus could never have suspected. Someone who's been living freely in this community for over 2 decades. The implications of Jenny's revelation began to sink in. If she truly had evidence of a decades-old murder, her life was indeed in danger, but not necessarily from an ex-cop seeking justice. Jenny, if you have evidence of a murder, you need to go to the authorities. Hiding out here isn't going to solve anything. That's just it, Jenny replied, her voice growing more urgent. The real killer is Detective Patricia Reynolds. She's been with the Cedar Rapids PD for 25 years. She was Marcus's partner on the case, and she's the one who reported his misconduct. Everyone thinks she's a hero for exposing corruption, but she was covering her own tracks. She killed my sister, then manipulated Marcus into destroying his own career trying to solve a case she knew he could never crack. Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. Patricia Reynolds was a respected member of the community, someone Sarah had met at various town functions over the years. The idea that this woman could be a murderer seemed impossible. "How do you know this?" Sarah asked. "Because 3 months ago, my mother finally died of cancer. While I was cleaning out her house, I found a safety deposit box I never knew existed. Inside was a letter from Rachel, written the day before she died, describing her relationship with Detective Reynolds. My sister was gay, Mrs. Mitchell, and Patricia Reynolds was her lover. But Patricia was married, had a family, a career to protect. When Rachel threatened to go public with their relationship, Patricia killed her. The story was becoming more complex and dangerous by the minute." Sarah looked at Jenny hanging from the tree and realized that this young woman had put herself in this position as a form of protection, visible to anyone who might be looking for her, but also in a position where any violent action against her would be witnessed. "So Marcus Webb is trying to find you to get this evidence?" Sarah asked. "No." Jenny shook her head. "Marcus doesn't know about the evidence yet, but Patricia does. I made the mistake of confronting her last week, thinking I could get her to confess. Instead, she's been hunting me ever since. She knows I have proof of what she did, and she'll kill me to keep it secret. But Marcus has been tracking me too, because he thinks I might have information about David Chen. He doesn't know that David is innocent or that his old partner is the real killer." Sarah studied Jenny's face and saw nothing but exhaustion, fear, and determination. Whatever was happening here, Jenny Morrison truly believed she was doing the right thing, even if it cost her life. "I'll be back in 2 hours," Sarah said finally. "Try to stay alive until then." As Sarah walked back toward the house, she felt the weight of invisible eyes upon her. Whether they belonged to Marcus Webb, Patricia Reynolds, or someone else entirely, she couldn't tell. But she knew that the next few hours would determine whether a 23-year-old murder would finally be solved or whether new bodies would be added to the count. Inside the house, Emma was eating breakfast and getting ready for school, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding just yards from her bedroom window. Sarah forced herself to act normally, making small talk about Emma's upcoming algebra test and reminding her to take her lunch money. After Emma left on the school bus, Sarah sat alone in her kitchen, staring out at the oak tree where Jenny Morrison hung like a scarecrow with a beating heart. The rational part of her mind insisted that she should call the police immediately, but Jenny's warnings about Patricia Reynolds being a corrupt cop gave her pause. Sarah grabbed her car keys and headed for Cedar Rapids, praying that she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her life. The drive to the Greyhound station took 45 minutes, during which she replayed every detail of her conversation with Jenny, looking for inconsistencies or signs of deception. The bus station was nearly empty at mid-morning on a weekday. Sarah located locker number 47 and hesitated for a moment before using the key she had taken from Jenny's pocket. Inside the locker was a manila envelope containing exactly what Jenny had described: a handwritten letter, several photographs, and a knife wrapped in plastic. Rachel Morrison's letter was dated the day before her death and described in heartbreaking detail her relationship with Detective Patricia Reynolds. The photographs showed Patricia Reynolds with visible scratch marks on her face, taken apparently without her knowledge. The knife appeared to be a standard hunting blade, the kind that could be found in thousands of homes throughout Iowa. Sarah's hands shook as she read Rachel's letter. The young woman had been planning to come out publicly about her relationship with Patricia, not to hurt the detective's career, but because she was tired of hiding who she was. She had no idea that this decision would cost her life. The drive back to the farm seemed to take forever. Sarah's mind raced with questions about what she should do with the evidence, whether Jenny would still be alive when she returned, and what role she was supposed to play in the confrontation that seemed inevitable. As she pulled into her driveway, Sarah immediately noticed that something had changed. The rope was still there, but it was swaying differently in the breeze. Moving closer, she realized why. Jenny Morrison was no longer hanging from it. The rope had been cut, leaving about 3 feet dangling from the oak branch. There was no sign of Jenny, no blood, no indication of a struggle. It was as if she had simply vanished into the morning air. Sarah's first instinct was to call out, but some survival instinct kept her quiet. If Jenny had been freed by Marcus Webb, they might both be hiding nearby, waiting for Patricia Reynolds to arrive. If Patricia had found Jenny first, then Sarah might be walking into a trap herself. Moving carefully around the oak tree, Sarah noticed fresh footprints in the soft earth, at least 3 different sets. One appeared to belong to a woman about Jenny's size, one to a larger man, and one to someone wearing police-issue boots. The sound of a car engine approaching made Sarah's heart race. She quickly hid the envelope of evidence under a pile of firewood near the house and tried to look as natural as possible as a sedan pulled into her driveway. Detective Patricia Reynolds stepped out of the unmarked car, looking exactly as Sarah remembered her from community events. Professional, confident, and completely unthreatening. She was wearing civilian clothes rather than her uniform, which struck Sarah as odd for a mid-morning visit. "Mrs. Mitchell?" Patricia approached with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm investigating a missing person case. A young woman named Jennifer Morrison was last seen in this area, and I was wondering if you might have noticed anything unusual this morning." Sarah's mouth went dry. Patricia was here, just as Jenny had predicted, but Jenny was nowhere to be seen. Where were Marcus Webb and his carefully laid trap? "I haven't seen anyone," Sarah replied, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "What does this woman look like?" "Auburn hair, early 20s, probably wearing a green jacket. She's been missing for several days, and her family is very worried about her." The lie rolled off Patricia's tongue so smoothly that Sarah almost believed it herself. But she had seen Jenny with her own eyes, had heard her story, had retrieved the evidence that proved Patricia Reynolds was a killer. "No, I definitely haven't seen anyone like that," Sarah said. "But I'll keep an eye out and call if I notice anything." Patricia's smile became more genuine, but there was something predatory about it. "Actually, Mrs. Mitchell, I think you're lying to me. You see, I've been watching your property for the past hour, and I saw you take something from Jennifer's pocket before you left for town. I also saw you return with an envelope that you've hidden somewhere nearby." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Patricia had been watching the entire time, which meant she had also seen what happened to Jenny and Marcus Webb. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah said, but even she could hear the tremor in her voice. Patricia sighed and pulled a service weapon from beneath her jacket. "Mrs. Mitchell, I really wish you hadn't gotten involved in this. Jennifer Morrison was a troubled young woman who was obsessed with her sister's death. She broke into my house last week and stole some old case files, then started making wild accusations about things that happened decades ago. I've been trying to help her get the psychiatric treatment she needs." "Where is she now?" Sarah asked. "Safe," Patricia replied. "Marcus Webb found her about an hour ago and took her to the county hospital for evaluation. Poor man has been chasing shadows for 23 years, and Jennifer's delusions just fed into his obsession. But before she was taken away, she told Marcus about evidence she claimed to have hidden. Evidence that supposedly proves I killed her sister." Sarah's mind raced. Was Patricia telling the truth? Had Jenny been delusional all along? Or was this just another layer of deception from a practiced killer? "I should probably get back to my housework," Sarah said, taking a small step toward the house. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to tell me where Jennifer hid the evidence. Not because I'm worried about what it contains, There is no evidence because I didn't kill Rachel Morrison, but because as long as these items are missing, Jennifer will never get the help she needs. She'll keep believing her delusions are real. Patricia's explanation was logical and delivered with the authority of someone accustomed to being believed. But Sarah remembered the desperate sincerity in Jenny's eyes, the detailed letter from Rachel Morrison, and the photographs that seemed to support Jenny's story. I really don't know anything about evidence, Sarah insisted. Patricia raised the gun slightly. Mrs. Mitchell, I've been a police officer for 25 years. I can tell when someone is lying to me. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time. Where did Jennifer Morrison hide the evidence she stole from my house? Sarah realized that regardless of who was telling the truth about the past, her immediate situation was clear. She was facing an armed police officer who believed Sarah had something she wanted. The smart thing to do was cooperate and hope for the best. There's an envelope hidden under the firewood pile by the house, Sarah admitted. Patricia nodded approvingly. Thank you for being honest. Now, I'm going to retrieve that envelope, and then we're going to discuss how to handle this situation in a way that protects everyone involved. As Patricia moved toward the firewood pile, Sarah noticed movement in the cornfield beyond the oak tree. Someone was definitely out there, watching and waiting. She prayed it was Marcus Webb with backup, not another threat. Patricia found the envelope and quickly examined its contents. For the first time since arriving, her composed demeanor cracked slightly. Sarah saw fear flash across the detective's face as she read Rachel Morrison's letter. This is very sophisticated, Patricia said finally. Jennifer has created quite an elaborate fraud here. The handwriting is a good forgery of Rachel's, and these photographs have been doctored to make it look like I had scratches on my face 23 years ago. But Sarah had seen Patricia's reaction to the letter, and it wasn't the reaction of someone seeing a forgery for the first time. It was the reaction of someone seeing ghosts from her past come back to haunt her. The knife is a nice touch too, Patricia continued, pulling it from the envelope. Any knife can be made to look old, and fingerprints can be planted. Jennifer has clearly put a lot of thought into this fantasy. Sarah watched Patricia handle the knife and realized that regardless of whether the evidence was real or forged, she was now alone with an armed woman who was clearly unstable. Patricia's calm facade was cracking, revealing something darker underneath. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now we wait for Marcus to call me back, Patricia replied. He's having Jennifer evaluated at the hospital, and once the doctors confirm that she's delusional, this whole matter will be resolved. Jennifer will get the help she needs. Marcus will finally accept that some cases can't be solved, and you'll forget this morning ever happened. But Sarah could see in Patricia's eyes that this wasn't how things were going to end. There were too many loose ends, too many people who knew too much. Patricia had already killed once to protect her secrets, and she was clearly prepared to do it again. The sound of footsteps approaching through the corn made both women turn. Marcus Webb emerged from the stalks, but he wasn't alone. Jenny Morrison was with him, very much alive and unharmed. Hello, Patricia, Marcus said calmly. We need to talk. Patricia raised her weapon, pointing it alternately between Marcus and Jenny. Marcus, thank God you're here. This woman, she gestured towards Sarah, has been helping Jennifer spread lies about me. I think Jennifer may have threatened her family to get her cooperation. But Marcus wasn't buying Patricia's story. Patricia, I've spent the last hour listening to Jennifer's account of what happened to Rachel. At first, I thought she was just another delusional family member who couldn't accept that some murders go unsolved. But then she showed me Rachel's letter. The letter is a forgery, Patricia insisted. Jennifer broke into my house and stole old case files, then used them to create this elaborate fiction. I thought so too, Marcus replied, until Jennifer told me something that was never in any case file, something that only the killer would know. Rachel Morrison wasn't just murdered, Patricia. She was tortured first. The killer spent hours with her before finally ending her life. That detail was never released to the public, never included in any report. The only people who knew were me, the coroner, and the killer. Patricia's face went pale. Marcus, you're making a mistake. Jennifer could have gotten that information from anywhere. No, Marcus interrupted. She couldn't have, because I never wrote it down. I never told anyone. It was the kind of detail that haunted me for 23 years, the kind of thing I tried to forget. But Jennifer described exactly what was done to her sister, in perfect detail. Sarah watched the confrontation unfold, realizing that she was witnessing the final moments of a case that had consumed 2 lives and was about to consume more. Patricia Reynolds, Marcus said formally, you are under arrest for the murder of Rachel Morrison. Patricia's laugh was hollow and bitter. You can't arrest me, Marcus. You're not a cop anymore. Remember? You lost that right when you let your obsession destroy your career. And even if you were still a detective, you have no authority here. This is all just the fantasy of a disturbed young woman who can't accept her sister's death. You're right, Marcus agreed. I can't arrest you, but I can make sure you never hurt anyone else. Sarah saw Marcus reaching for his own weapon and realized that Jenny's fears about vigilante justice were about to come true. In desperation, she called out, "Wait, there has to be another way." But it was too late. Patricia, seeing Marcus draw his gun, fired first. Marcus spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. Jenny screamed and ran toward him, but Patricia swung the weapon toward her. "Enough!" Patricia shouted. "This ends now." Sarah acted on instinct, grabbing a piece of firewood and hurling it at Patricia's head. The detective stumbled but didn't fall, turning the gun towards Sarah with fury in her eyes. "You should have stayed out of this," Patricia snarled. The gunshot that followed seemed impossibly loud in the quiet morning air. Sarah braced for the impact, but it never came. Instead, Patricia Reynolds crumpled to the ground, blood spreading from a wound in her chest. Marcus Webb lowered his smoking gun, his face grim with the weight of what he had done. 23 years, he said quietly. 23 years I've been waiting for this moment. Jenny knelt beside Patricia, checking for a pulse. "She's dead," she announced simply. Sarah stared at the scene in shock. In the space of a few hours, her quiet farm had become the site of a murder, and she had been an unwilling participant in vigilante justice. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus holstered his weapon and pulled out his cell phone. "Now I call the authorities and explain what happened. Patricia Reynolds killed Rachel Morrison 23 years ago, and today she was killed while attempting to murder 3 witnesses to her crime. The evidence in that envelope will support everything Jennifer and I say about what happened." "But you're not a cop anymore," Sarah pointed out. "You had no authority to." "I had the authority of a citizen protecting innocent lives," Marcus replied. "Patricia was armed and dangerous. She had already shot me and was threatening to kill you and Jennifer. Any prosecutor will see this as justified self-defense." Jenny stood and walked over to her sister's killer, looking down at Patricia's lifeless body. "I thought I'd feel different when this moment came," she said. "I thought there would be satisfaction or closure or something. But I just feel empty." Marcus put his good arm around Jenny's shoulders. "Justice isn't about satisfaction," he said. "It's about making sure the truth finally comes to light. Your sister's murder won't be forgotten anymore. Patricia Reynolds won't hurt anyone else. That has to be enough." As they waited for the authorities to arrive, Sarah reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. That morning she had been a simple farmer's wife, going about her routine chores. Now she was a key witness in a decades-old murder case and the resolution of a vendetta that had consumed multiple lives. The investigation that followed would reveal that Patricia Reynolds had indeed killed Rachel Morrison in a crime of passion 23 years earlier. Rachel's letter, authenticated by handwriting experts, detailed the toxic relationship between the 2 women and Patricia's growing desperation to keep their affair secret. The photographs and physical evidence supported Jenny's account of events. Marcus Webb was cleared of any wrongdoing in Patricia's death, with investigators determining that he had acted in defense of himself and others. His obsession with the Rachel Morrison case was finally vindicated, though the victory came at a terrible personal cost. Jenny Morrison used her newfound freedom to establish a foundation for victims' families, helping other people navigate the complex world of cold cases and police investigations. She never returned to Iowa, but she sent Sarah a letter every year on the anniversary of that October morning, thanking her for the courage to do the right thing when it mattered most. Sarah's life returned to its normal rhythm, but she never forgot the lesson she learned that day. Sometimes ordinary people are called upon to make extraordinary choices, and the decision to act with courage rather than fear can change the course of justice itself. The old oak tree still stands on her property, but the rope is long gone, cut down the same day Patricia Reynolds died. In its place, Sarah planted a small memorial garden for Rachel Morrison, a reminder that some stories, no matter how long buried, will eventually find their way to the light.